Welcome, guys. Good to have you. So we're talking about employee of the future and how digital technology and trends will impact that, and social trends will impact that. So you've all got an opinion on that, I hope, and some thoughts, I hope. So let's start off with a question, if we could, and maybe we'll just go around the table and warm up a bit around how technology can enable a more productive workforce. Enrique, can we start with you? You've got a very distributed workforce out in the field. Perhaps you've got some thoughts on that.
For us, very important is communication. So enabling, we've got people in very many locations, rail tracks, in pits, in mechanical pits, etc., who need communication. We need to know where they are, we need to talk to them. And traditionally, it would have been a job of maybe a supervisor kind of going around and checking. Now you can have someone on a rail track reasonably safe through technology. Because both the person knows where the train is, the train knows where the person is, and so on and so forth.
Oh, so safety is a big thing.
Safety is a big thing.
Yeah. And is that impacting their productivity as well?
It impacts their productivity because, of course, they need to, they don't need to worry about those things. They need to spend less time in, checking on things or doing things because technology does it for them.
Okay. Yeah. Great. And who wants to chip in next? Who's got something different from the workforce?
Yeah. I suppose from my perspective at MacDonald, we're a professional services organisation. So
it's a very different community.
Yeah, we've got 17,000 people spread out all over the world, knowledge workers. And I think over the last 10 years, like the improvement in productivity has been enormous. And we're an industry, we're sort of infrastructure focused, an industry where productivity is a real problem. So I think the improvement's all down to cloud technology and the rise of cloud. So what we're finding, just a couple of examples. So people are completely liberated from their desk. So they're different type of people from your organisation. So we can work wherever we want, whenever we want, and almost from any device we want. And that's just such an improvement for people's work-life balance, although there are risks as well, obviously.
Okay, so work-life balance and therefore productivity, do you think?
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, fantastic.
The other thing that I think even more profound is the ability to communicate and collaborate across the world. So we've got world-class experts around the world. Yeah. And what we can do now, because you can access people, you can communicate, is we can bring that expert to bear on the client's problem and make sure we get the best solution. But the other way that's been really interesting, I think, over the last few years is the rise of communities. So what we find, you've got the expert that probably knows the answer, but if you post a question onto one of our communities, you get like a crowdsourced answer as well.
Right.
Yeah. And it's moderated by the community.
Yeah.
And we're finding that we're getting exceptional sort of innovative solutions to problems.
Better results because of that. So in fact, one of our questions is around remaining cohesive and employees remaining cohesive despite perhaps digital technology separating them in geographies and physical locations. But actually what you're saying there is that's enabling that cohesion through communities and crowdsourcing ideas and those kinds of things. Fantastic.
Picking up those thoughts, Johnson Matthey is in 32 countries around the world, and we've got plants and scientists around the world, and our mission is to make the world a cleaner and healthier place today and for the future. And our strategy is to look at this in three ways. So we've got scientists, we've got managers, we've got producers in plants. So what we have to do for the scientists, which is based on knowledge sharing and the ability to share data securely but very efficiently amongst those experts, as you do with MacDonald, is to provide tools to enable that. For the managers, it's on a global basis. How do we run a genuinely global enterprise across time zones that absolutely do not overlap? So providing those collaboration tools, and we're putting in 100 video rooms around the world to really make that effective. And then finally, and probably the most biggest opportunity for productivity is in plants, where we manufacture about a third of the world's catalytic converters. We're investing in new battery materials for electric vehicles, how do we put in latest machine learning analytics on top of those plants to really optimize production? So 3 very different groups of employees that we need to enable in different ways.
Yeah, fascinating. And Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to lead on collaboration because I think that is a key element, but more around perhaps the innovation. So not necessarily problem solving, but co-creation. And we do a lot of open innovation, working with external, third parties, and then bringing them into that community in the R&D side of things. And I think, I guess we're all quite similar in those
absolutely,
areas. Yeah.
And the plant side of things, so the production plant, obviously you're into production of chemicals. Are you seeing technology in plant and what I would call industrial IT?
Yes, definitely.
Are you seeing that impact
Yeah,
there?
I think there's 2 aspects there. I think there's an element of efficiency and, again, enabling the frontline worker, removing paper from the process. We've still got a bit of that going on. But equally, how do we use data in real time to affect that production process? Because, chemical manufacturing is affected even by the weather, right? So the pressure changes can affect the production process. So you need to get that data in real time, and you need to influence it, in production run.
Very good. And Mark, what your viewpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot's been covered. Device proliferation. Darren mentioned anytime, anywhere. So getting data on the go. It being done globally because the workforce is global, the customer base is ever more global, as Enrico mentioned, and collaboration is critical. So once you've got that, how do you enable them to work in disparate locations? So all of that is good. But actually the exciting stuff often is once that's done, how do you deliver business disruption in the models to go out to business? And putting the data and the analytics at workforce's fingertips, certainly in somewhere like Mott, MacDonald. So instead of spending 60% of their day trying to get to the answer, they've already got information, not data, to then enable them to execute on faster decision making, whether that be on better chemical manufacturing or whatever. And I think that's the exciting thing, and that's where and actually the business and the competitors in that globalization are demanding that speed of efficiency. I don't think any of us are going through digital transformation for the sake of it. It's about where we need to go at the end of it to stay competitive and to deliver revenue growth effectively.
Okay, and just perhaps continuing with you for a second, Mark, how are you seeing organisations that you work with cope with that speed of change around that application of digital technology? Because certainly I come across a lot of people who are struggling to consume it at the pace that has the potential to improve productivity, but how do they consume it? How can you, do you have a view on that?
It's a challenge, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of noise, whether it's from SD-WAN vendors saying this is what you've got to do to make a better network. You've got CEOs that are saying, well, maybe you don't have as much money. We want you to reduce the cost by 25, 30% a year. We need you to keep all of these applications on whilst turning everything onto cloud. So, the concept of, I guess, you've got to change the wheel whilst driving. And I think what we tend to find is the groundwork's the most important thing. So understanding, the network starts most things. So enabling that then enables you to deliver a much more advanced unified communication system. But also being mindful, what we find working with some of our customers is being very clear on the goals they're looking to achieve from a business perspective. And often, you talk to many CTOs, I'm sure it's like, well, how was it successful? Well, I didn't really get any complaints. Was about the best that it could deliver, but actually delivering what have you been enabled to put into the cloud, whether that be an SAP platform or something else that's enabled you to change the way you go to market.
Sure.
And I think having a clear goal of what's in sight is critical.
Sure. And perhaps we'll just have a little whip round and see, is there anything getting in the way of you guys consuming technology to enable productivity? Let's start here with Dave.
I was going to say I think there is a clear line almost between digital natives and digital immigrants, and I think that's been, and obviously the digital immigrants are more experienced and often in the management or leadership positions of an organisation.
Right.
And they're often the people who are struggling most with how do I take advantage of these changes that are available. So you've got the younger generations coming in wanting it and expecting it in some respects,
right.
But the business leaders needing to feel comfortable and not exposed. I think they can feel exposed at a lot of times.
And to make it into a matrix, if I may. We also have that distinction between frontline and back office, where typically frontline is a lot more regulated, often unionized, while the back office is possibly more flexible, more in tune with technology and so on and so forth. And that makes it quite different in terms of its expansion and its...
Okay, so we've got the divide between natives and immigrants. I like the fact that you use natives and not millennials, because that word drives me crazy, and I think younger people probably hate being called millennials, so let's not do it.
Yes,
and Enrico,
as does us oldies, you know, the distinction that we can't understand technology.
Yeah, well, everyone's
exactly,
the same, right?
yes.
Everyone's the same. And Enrico, you're talking about actually the differentiation between back office and front office. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about social trends then, and that's a good segue, because I guess people coming from different backgrounds or of different generations might have different social trends. But we're seeing remote working, unlimited holidays, people working from home. I noticed that Japan are now seem to be going to a 4-day week, which I'm, very keen to do.
Shall we move to
I think we could all go to Japan. But Darren, what about you? Do you see anything impactful around either those types of workforces or their social norms that come with them that you're having to respond to?
Absolutely. So, I'll avoid the word millennials for a bit.
It's banned henceforth.
Being a millennial is a state of mind anyway. So I think it's the mega trends that interest me. So obviously one of the mega trends is technology, which we're all seeing and we're all involved with. So day to day, as people have said, the rise of data-driven solutions, artificial intelligence, that's going to be like fundamental change to the industry I work in and lots of industries. But the other mega trend is climate change, which I think is really going to impact us all. So the people that we're seeing coming into our industry, because we're an industry, we're civil engineering, we're there to look after, it sounds a bit grand, but sort of the fabric of society, the infrastructure that we all run on. And the people that come into our industry are absolutely driven by making a difference. So I think we're going to see increasingly people coming into our organisation, and we're already there, that are focused on that sort of triple bottom line, social, environmental and economic benefit.
How are you seeing those two, if I can use your term, megatrends, converge between that pressure on climate change, that trend is coming into your organisation, and then what you're having to do with technology to answer that trend? What are you seeing in the relationship there?
So you're right, they're absolutely connected. So I read a fact or stat the other day that in the next decade, 20% of carbon will be due to sort of IT-based solutions, IoT and those sort of things. Yeah, massive. But technology is part of the solution. Absolutely part of the solution. We are involved in infrastructure schemes, so water, rail, road, and the rise of data-driven solutions for that is phenomenal. We see that we can drive massive additional value out of those infrastructure assets. So, if you can get that extra value, it means you don't have to build new bits, although you do obviously still need to build new bits at times. So I think that's what attracts people to our organisation. It's the ability to improve the outcomes for people that use it. And going back to, I think what was the question was, as leaders of our businesses, we need to be aware of that, and we need to create an environment where those sort of people can thrive and absolutely deliver their best.
I think they're complementary. So technology is the thing that joins it all up, and that's what we have to do. In Johnson Matthey globally, to provide the systems and the applications that not just move the data around, but enable people to interact, collaboratively. But that's the thing that does it technologically. But you're right, it's the purpose of the organisation that joins it up, if you like, emotionally and intellectually. So the purpose of Johnson Matthey is to make the world a cleaner and healthier place today and future generations by a third of the world's catalytic converters, battery materials. We manufacture anti-cancer drugs and components for them. So that's the mission. So I think if you can join up the technology with the purpose, then you're actually starting to build a corporation for the future, which is motivated and uses technology and is, as you said, very aware that actually, consuming IT has an impact on the environment. And we've got an infrastructure program going on at the moment, one of whose KPIs that we track is reducing emissions. And we measure that monthly as part of our commitment, because you're right, actually, the more you invest, the more you manage your technology, the less emitting it is.
Very good.
Yeah, I was just going to, it's really interesting because we obviously deal with such a range of different customers, but it's something that's become more and more on the agenda, environmental change, and what are we doing? And typically as Tata Group, of course, we have Tata Chemicals, we have Jaguar Land Rover, more natively focused on how you reduce your carbon footprint. But we were sitting with a major airline, of course, who were also interested in reducing it, and they were asking us, what are we doing? Because of the byproduct of everything moving to cloud, of course, is you've got larger data centers that are producing more emissions as well. So it's coming full circle,
Yep.
and I don't think it's an option anymore. I think it has to be a core part of your strategy, and it's certainly something that, from an IT perspective, we're looking to get in front of. We don't have all the answers yet, but building that carefully and considerately to ensure that you're doing it in complying with various things, and actually going above compliance to do it will be important. And actually, as an employer, I think being able to comfortably state that you are doing this is going to be attractive to the best employees, because they will demand it.
So as a technology provider, you're also having to attend to your own technology and consumption that's impacting climate. And how about some real life examples where you guys have seen where you've been able to apply some technology that's either helping to deal with these changing social demands and to increase productivity, or even to answer some of the megatrends that you were talking about? And let's start with you, Mark, again, where we were. Any examples that you're seeing via customers on that front?
Yeah, I guess we do a lot of work with F1. So super exciting environment, but of course
world-class producers, yes.
and they've come out in the news and said that that they're going to be carbon neutral.
Indeed.
Funnily enough, it's not so much obviously they'll look at the actual pollution from the cars is insignificant compared to the amount of stuff that has to be transported to the event. So it's all the lorries and everything else.
And all this
if you look at the media, so they used to have a fleet of people, even looking at things like VAR in the Premier League, that media can now be delivered seamlessly from a place, wherever in the world. And because of the technology and the speed of data transference, you are actually not needing anywhere near, there's sort of a 70-80% reduction in people traveling to those events to enable that. Now, of course, at the back end of that, there's a data center doing all that stuff, which we then need to address. But I think probably it's the bigger evil at the start, and then you work how you diminish it moving down.
Yeah.
But that's certainly a very real life example where technology, in terms of data speeds, comms capability, to be able to get that information to your fingertips. And it is really, imagine in an F1 race, having that data at your fingertips. Absolutely. To make real-time decisions on pit stops and stuff, which would have been a fleet of people not needed anymore. Or not needed on site.
Okay, great example. So you're talking about giving people access to the data and the streaming remotely from location. Let's flip. Can we come to you about mobile workforce and how you're seeing that? Practical implications and applications for you in your workforce?
Again, we have a bit of a focus on, so from an environmental point of view, we went live, I don't know, it must have been a year and a half ago, with the first all-electric depot actually around the corner from here. And all the buses are electric, and people are really proud of the employees. They like it, we like it, the fact that we could achieve something like that. So that could be maybe an example of engaging the workforce. The other mega trend that I wanted to highlight is the flexibility of. I think the younger generations are going to demand more flexible work, because when I was young, my life expectancy was about 75, 80 at best. My kids now will be thinking 100, so they're going to have to pace themselves, and the way to do it would be through flexible work, and we need to enable the tools for that flexible work to happen. It may well be that they'll do only 3 days and be connected, and I think that flexibility we're going to see a lot of in the next few years.
And are you starting to provide What sort of flexible solutions do you have already? What are you thinking of in the next year or two? What's in your mind?
Again, big difference between a bus driver or a train driver has to be on the vehicle.
Has to be there, yeah. They can't work from home, right?
There's little things though, like for instance, be able to change the duties and the rosters using devices. So instead of having to use a supervisor to mediate between two people, they can now do it on devices and kind of talk to their mates and do it on a device. Yeah. So there's little bits that will improve that.
Giving them control of their working patterns. And the guys that are perhaps more managerial in the back office? We're
seeing a lot of flexible work and a lot of remote working. Like, I don't know, if you finish the day at 1 o'clock, you go home and keep working, as opposed to, and similar to yourself, you can now log into your, I don't use a computer anymore. I use all the computers that I want because everything is on the cloud. So I'm not dependent on, I've got a deadline today and I'll do it from home, as opposed to have to go to the office because it's a different computer. Who cares? It's the same system.
Can I come to you, Dave?
Yeah, I just think one of the consequences of, the, if you like, the increasing longevity that we're seeing is that on average, the age of employees is going to go up. Right, so we're going to end up working for longer. Right? Maybe not our generation, but the generation, the employees of the future will want more flexibility, but they'll also have to work longer in reality, which comes back to then, well, we have a reskilling question. So, again, if you look back 100 years and think how much has changed, and we look forward 100 years, well, we obviously can't predict what's going to happen exactly, but we know it's going to be probably a lot more than if we look backwards. So how much reskilling of the workforce is going to have to be part and parcel of that in order to give them flexibility, perhaps, and how many we might have different careers. Our children may be doing different types of job throughout their working career, very different to perhaps the way we've worked ourselves.
Sure. And examples from you, Dave, about where you have already implemented solutions, technology solutions that are helping you now, and things you've got in the pipeline?
Well, I think the remote working example is a good one. So that flexibility of really good peer-to-peer video conferencing or group-to-group just reduces the amount of travel that people were expected in a global organisation. Travel was a prerequisite to keeping that cohesion. That's reduced dramatically now with that. The advances in video conferencing, I would say.
And stress levels accordingly, travelling into London.
Yes, indeed. Having just suffered the strike. So we're putting in 100 video conferencing rooms around the world. But one of the things, we've all experienced the hassles of those things. So, one of the things we really work to do is to make it, user-friendly, even for directors, and train people to do it so people really use them and remind them to put their headphones on and things like that. It's silly little stuff, but actually is really important. Another example is we've got 35 sort of mini data centers around the world in all the different countries, and we're doing the standard thing, putting quite a lot in the cloud, but also 3 colo data centers around the world. That has a massive effect, actually, on emissions, and you can really make a difference through that, I think.
Very good. And Darren, any thoughts?
I was just going to pick up on one small point there. So, in Mott MacDonald, we've implemented VoIP, so everyone can do what they want in terms of communication, and we found that one of the key things is, if you've got a lot of people in a meeting room, and then a few people around the edges, the people around the edges don't communicate so well. No. So we've got meetings now where everyone does it from their desk and everyone's on an equal footing. So it's a trivial example, but it really makes a difference for engaging people.
And I think that's really important with it, and I think that's increasingly where sort of CIOs, CTOs need to go, which is we need to care about the whole user experience. It's not good enough to put the stuff in. You've really got to support it and follow it through. And it sounds minor, but it can make so much difference to how a global organisation works.
Yeah. So we've got things even as simple as, and we use it ourselves as well as delivering it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, just delivering it. I mean, the biggest issues you've got with some of these things like Microsoft is the actual consumption and activation of the platform. Yeah. You put it in, it mothballs. You're only using 30% of it. So actually, but addressing the culture, and we've all probably done it when you're dialing in remotely, but you're not really paying attention. because you're doing about 5 other things. So mandating that you actually dial in via video.
Yes.
You can't do it then. You actually have to focus and you're automatically more engaged within the discussion. But there's lots of little things like that. Of course, you don't need to do that if you're physically in a location, but it's very interesting.
Leave your phone in the entrance.
Yeah.
We do that with the team meetings. There, people are not allowed phones. We put them in a tray in the entrance.
Yes. So we're about humans as well as technology. It's how humans use technology. Yeah.
Very interesting.
I think all transformation, we look at it, it's sort of maybe 50% technology, but maybe more than 50% people. So we focus hard on the people bit. But I was just reflecting on our sort of digital journey. So we started some time ago, and I think we've gone through 3 waves of this. So the first one was this technology transformation where you put in all, as you say, all the plumbing. If you haven't got the basic stuff in place, you don't stand a chance. You know, if people can't get to the internet or get the computer they want, then you can't do anything else. So we went through that phase, and then the next phase we called the digital transformation, which was about driving that imperative, people understanding the importance of technology, but most importantly, getting them to use it. So, you know, the people change. So we're still probably on that journey, but we're a long way into it. And we're now onto this third phase, which I think is the super exciting one, which is about the business transformation. And we're now able to deliver new business streams to clients. They don't digitize the solution. They radically improve it. You know, 10 times improvements on what you can do. But I think you only get there if you go through that journey.
Yes.
And you bring all the people along with you.
Yeah. It's a really fascinating question. We've talked a lot about workers. Let's talk a little bit for a second about the business itself. Darren, you started, a great segue, thank you, started talking about how you can apply technology transformation to enable the actual business itself and the product or service itself. Have you guys got any thoughts? Paul, can we come to you about how you might be using technology transformation to change materially what your business can offer, how successful it is, or even the products and services they sell? Anything from you?
Absolutely. So what we've done, we provide a third of the world's catalytic converters for vehicles, but we also provide industrial catalysts for a variety of chemical reactions. One of those is manufacturing formaldehyde, which we service plants around the world on that and have some of the provide the active ingredient for those. And what we already had was data coming back from our customers in terms of the performance of those catalysts. Basically, they last for about a year and then need replacing. And depending on how they're constructed, they perform well. But we weren't using that data for our purposes or their purposes. So what we've piloted is effectively formaldehyde as a service. So we monitor the data coming back in terms of the performance of that catalyst, in terms of its efficiency, in terms of all the surrounding conditions. That enables our customers to improve how it's used. It enables us to optimize when it's replaced. It puts all of us in control, and we can then optimize our customers. We can optimize our manufacturing. So that's transforming that from the classic, here's a product, to actually we're providing a service. It's real time. They give us the data. They can then monitor their services with complete confidentiality. And that's something we're going to sort of grow out. So we've put that into something called the Competency Centre for Advanced Analytics, where we test these proofs of concept. And because that one's gone mainstream, we'll apply it to some other areas as well. And we're testing other proofs of concept, such as how you put analytics on a AutoCAD plant or digital twins and those sort of things. So, we're starting with a kind of deep dive into one vertical. And then if that works, and not all of them have worked, we then move to others.
So you very much have your own innovation, if you like, if I can use that word, lab approach.
Precisely.
And is that something you have internal capability to do, or you use partners? How does that work?
what I've learned from sort of previous lives is you've got to own it. Because we know our businesses better than anyone else, and our colleagues, in IT and business working together. Yes, absolutely, we need to work with partners. We in this case, we've worked with AWS in terms of their cloud platform, which, as we all know, is very flexible, and some of their key partners in order to help us in terms of build analytics engines. But we own the IP for that, we own the skills on that, and we've also building a sort of web capability and agile development as a hybrid thing with some other people.
Yes, so can we come to you, Darren? Do you have thoughts on sort of innovation labs in your own sense?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's really interesting how similar
same approach,
your journey is. So, and I love that you mentioned digital twins, because I think they're a fundamental thing for the future. So a digital representation of a physical asset. Yeah. But what we do, because we believe professional services is going to be completely disrupted and maybe destroyed by technology. So we're trying to reinvent professional services in our infrastructure industry. And we've created a specific part of the business called MacDonald Digital Ventures, which is all about new business streams. And that means technology and business models. So we've got 17,000 super clever people, but we do recognise there's more super clever people outside of MacDonald than maybe there are in it. So partnering is fundamental to us. And we've got this attitude that if someone is providing a solution, it's a good solution, then we will use that rather than try and reinvent the wheel. And we plug innovation into our solutions. Our strapline is we create, partner and invest in digital businesses. And we've created a venture capital arm to do that.
I see.
And it's great because all of the technology is there to improve the outcomes for the people that we all want to help. But big organisations find ways of stifling that innovation. And I think our mission is to try and help that innovation get all the way to the end to make the difference.
Yeah, very good. So you're very much owning that ideation and driving it forward, but with a community inside and outside your organisation that's helping you. Enrique, can I come to you about maybe a slightly different model for you, but how are you breeding that innovation, and how's that impacting the people that work for you, and how's that transpiring for you?
Our obsession is customers, because that's what we're not a B2B, we're B2C, and we're obsessed with the passenger journeys. We do 1.3 billion every year of those journeys, and we came a year and a half ago with something we call the Billion Journey Project, which is an accelerator. And what we do is we throw problems at people and little startups, medium-sized type people, and these problems tend to go around passenger journeys. Things like disabled passengers on trains, or it could be, we've recently gone live with something called demand response transport, which is a hybrid between a bus and a taxi. It's like a mini bus on demand, if you like, through an algorithm-based system. So, and it works quite well. It engages people as well that want to do something slightly different, and that experience has been quite good so far. Yeah.
Excellent. And you're working with perhaps smaller organisations.
Yeah, little. Some of them are as small as 3 or 4 people.
More niche ideas for you.
Niche ideas, and you keep some of those relations. Yesterday, actually, I had a chat with one of them from the first cohort, which is now, as I say, 18 months old. And we're still doing a bit of work with them. Just a small company is now about 20 people as opposed to 4 or 5, and little by little, yeah.
And how does that impact the people that are inside your organisation already? I know we started off talking about productivity and the workforce. How do these technology trends that you guys are implementing to enable the business, what's the effect on the internal people? How are they having to change their jobs, change their ways of working? How's that impact them?
It varies. Some people, like everything, we're humans at the end of the day. Some of them embrace it, some of them resist it. In some of our companies or environments, the unions resist a lot of the technology because they do. So it varies enormously.
Yeah. And we hear, I hear a lot in the marketplace, things like AI and RPA will, replace human jobs and those kinds of things. Mark, can I come to you for a second? I think it's really interesting hearing our guests from the buy side of the organisations talk about how they're becoming sort of technology companies themselves. As a provider of technology, what's the implications for you? How will you adapt, moving forwards from here?
So, I mean, I think first and foremost, we're not only supplying technology, but we need technology to supply technology. So if you look at our things like NPS, so our Net Promoter Score, we focus very much on what our customers are saying about us, very much like you, and things like order turnaround, billing capability, all of that can be transformed massively by digitization. So, in 3 years ago, it was okay to turn around an order from a customer in 4-6 weeks. Now you need to do it in days.
Yes.
In fact, even in 24 hours.
We're all used to online, aren't we?
But that means, and that means that they expect it as the customers expect it, and the consumers expect it, one-touch provisioning, all of that. So, again, we're kind of moving to deliver that at the same time, and that's not an insignificant task when you have a lot of technology that you need to bring with you, as you do in changing a business with existing IT systems and moving on. So I think that's first and foremost. The other thing is the globalization gives benefits, but also risks to employees. So all of our customers are demanding, generally, the question will be more capacity, more global reach, the same SLA and performance, but 25% cheaper. And you don't magic that up. So, you have to do it by redistributing the workforce. That as an AI can be a really important thing. And I would suggest that AI isn't necessarily replacing people. It's enabling people to do something that's more value add than perhaps things that are more necessarily monotonous or repetition based. And I think so incorporating that in a way and taking the staff on a journey, and I think you mentioned it, the reskilling. How can we add certification, and we do this a lot in looking at the different streams, to actually make you more productive, and then technology enables it, but it's bringing the humans along on the way to deliver more value to the customer at the end of it as well.
Very good. Dave, you want to have a
Well,
that?
I mean, I think the current term is cobot, right? So,
Is it? Okay.
Yeah,
I've learned something
It's
new
quite
today.
scary. Yes.
Thank
Yes,
you. What
yes,
is a
yes.
cobot?
It's the robot that helps me, right? It's how we work together. Whether that's a virtual assistant, whether it's an RPA bot, right? It's that idea that actually you use the technology to take some of that mundane work away from the worker and allow them to get to the nub of the problem sooner. And I don't think we're there yet by a long way.
No.
But that's definitely a trend. It will probably happen within the next few years. I imagine that we're seeing more and more of this.
And I think people seem to divide into optimists and pessimists about that, don't we? And I'm an optimist about this, and I think we've all seen those pictures of the horse economy in the 1890s with streets of London, and that moved into a second industrial revolution with mechanics replacing ostlers. And I was at a conference yesterday, and somebody stated that, I don't know whether I believe the number, but the essence is true, that in the States there are 250,000 vacancies for cyber specialists. There's certainly a lot of vacancies for cyber specialists, data specialists. So I think to your point, it requires people to be flexible and to retrain, and to also recognise that it goes a bit to our we're about technology but humans as well. So the end-to-end process. So in financial services. Taking your cobot model, the AI can do a lot, but the regulators are going to insist that decisions are still taken by a human being who has the experience to take the decisions. So I think it will develop. I think we can all see then new jobs arising in environmental industries, in healthcare. So I think the economy will adjust and change, but it will require all of us to be kind of flexible about that. So that doesn't matter whether you're a CIO or a CTO or an analyst or a program manager or a tech specialist. You've got to keep current because to be able to perform in the current marketplace.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So So our term isn't cobot, it's augmented delivery is the term. That
I think
we
I
use.
like that better.
Is it the same thing?
It's a similar thing, but it's the fact that humans are good at lots of stuff and machines are good at lots of stuff, and I think you've got to use the right thing for the right job. So we're all about augmenting the delivery of our solutions. So just to give an example, we design lots of pipelines, so water pipelines, gas, whatever. But the key thing is that you've got to get from A to B in the most efficient way, whether that's TOTEX, CapEx, or carbon. You need to know what the drivers are. And traditionally, it's a human activity of plotting out the routes, seeing, we can't go there, we can't go, in different places. But now we've built this genetic algorithm that it looks at millions of routes and learns as it goes in 3 hours, and it will come up with the optimal solution, whatever that optimal is for you as the client. But it's not, you still need clever people to interpret that, and we say we liberate people to do the things that they're good at. So, that clever innovation stuff that people need, or the human interaction things, and that's where I think employees of the future are going to go, to the things that humans are good at, and it will take that mundane away. So I'm a huge optimist about the future. I think we're going to deliver much better solutions and improve those outcomes.
Very good, very good. Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. Circling back round then on those changes that are coming down the pipeline in terms of bots, whatever we call them. What's the implications then on the worker and the workforce that you've got, and the implications of how their jobs will change and how it might need to change interacting with those kinds of technologies? Is anyone seeing the implementation of that bot technology and what it's doing to the individuals? Any changes in the workplace accordingly?
It's about adaptation. So as you all know, some of the underground routes are now fully automated. The driver is there just in case. And we're on the Thameslink trains, and between St Pancras and London Bridge, they're all automated now. So the drivers have had to adapt to the fact that they cannot put their hands on the thing unless there's a problem. It's all about adaptation. People are going to have to adapt because the reality is that it'll happen more and more.
And what implications are you seeing from that already, having automated that? What happens to people in that?
At the moment, I think I think it's working in terms of they realise that the volume of trains that we push through that line, you need computers to help you with it. It's the only way. The Victoria line, I think, is every minute. Humans can't cope with that.
No, and I guess we're talking about both productivity but also safety.
Safety
here as well.
You need signalling, and people are humans, and reality. They have to be there.
Dave, in your scenario, tell us.
Well, I think it's easy to forget managers in this process. So I see a lot of effort put into the frontline worker, whether they're front office, back office, right? The person who's using the tech is often, that's where the effort goes in retraining. Managers are often forgotten, I find, right? So as a manager, I might still be more comfortable with my Excel spreadsheet because that's what I've been using all this time, and it's my version. And moving those people to a different way of accessing information and managing staff, I think is a gap. I see that quite often.
So the management of the change,
management of
and
the people, of, how you run a team in the future, and what you need to consider. And I said there's a lot of effort goes into the person using the tech, but not necessarily the manager of the people using the tech.
Okay.
And I think it's really important that we as leaders of the technology change with the business leaders explain why and what's going on. And previous life, I was IT director at John Lewis when we were going through the online revolution, which is what we called it. We called it, this is going to go on omni-channel, and that had enormous implications for people who work in John Lewis sort of retail stores, because returns started turning up. You had to manage all of that. You had to recognise that a lot of the sales in your area were made online, but you may have sort of helped that because you demonstrated something in the store, the way people were shopping was changing fundamentally. And what the leadership of John Lewis then at that time did was got us all out to go and talk to everybody in the store. I had High Wycombe and Newcastle, and talked to the town hall about why retail was changing, and we needed to recognise that, and that meant their jobs would change fundamentally, and after Black Friday. There'll be an awful lot of returns coming into the store that they have to manage and deal with. They're not selling things; they're actually, which is, at first sight, not terribly, a sort of augmentation to their job, but actually getting people to recognise that that was how things changing. And one of the critical things that we did was make sure that any sales in that catchment area online were scored to that store so they could see the big picture. So I think, it's hardly original, is it? But just communicating and explaining is really, really important.
Sure. And Mark, can I come to you? I mean, how do you see yourselves either helping other organisations or even internally, adopting change and making the most out of technology? We've all seen in the past technologies applied and then sort of being 30% consumed because they've not been well landed. From your perspective, what do you see?
Well, I think it's just really interesting on your point around John Lewis, because that's something that moved to transition to online. I mean, that's gone through full cycle, and look at the impact on the high street today.
Yeah.
It wasn't, there's often, it's a Y2K, there's a load of your doom mongering, but actually that was a reality. And I think that a lot of businesses now, and certainly as we're going through the transformation, change is, it's just there, it's going to happen. But no change means no business. And the statistics that come out from this, where people don't execute their digital transformation properly, there's a very bleak outcome at the end of it.
We've seen.
So, you have to change. And I think now employees today understand that, because they're also consumers of technology themselves. So, it's interesting, but I'll always support my local store, except that I shop online. So the reality, is very much there. And it's them taking them on that journey to say, it's different, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just a different focus, and you're going to be deployed in a different way, or you're going to be. And so, in our business, certainly moving maybe more back office functions to then redeploy to more customer facing that can give to then answer your question. To then, what we find with a lot of customers that are going there is there's a lot of noise. I think I mentioned that before. How can I pick between these different vendors? How can I best pick a path that that enables this consumer transition or employee transition? Moving to cloud, and I know Mott went through this, you have to make things more secure. But then it's not a very nice experience for people dialing on from different places until you modify that, improve that. I think you had a phrase of frictionless user experience that working there. And again, it's part of that iteration. So we find if we can reuse those assets, say more of the mundane back office stuff, that is critical, but it can be automated, which frees up money to put more customer-facing expertise to then go and help companies transition and learn from.
Yep.
We did work with Carlsberg. I stood up on stage with the CTO. I wouldn't know how to make beer, but we do know how to make networks work better. Mm-hmm. So it's very much, it's
probably the best network in the world.
Probably the best network in the world, yes, to coin the phrase.
Very good.
I think it's a great example where I think partnerships are so important in this area, right? Because, partners get to see so many applications of their skill set, right, or their product, whatever it might be. So, moving away from suppliers where, again, we think we know what we want, but actually moving it into a partnership model where we're actually saying, yes, we'll have the software, but how should we use it?
Yes.
What have you seen elsewhere? What is best practice? We want to move to that. I think that's a big step we've had to go through.
Very good. And what's been fascinating as we've talked all the way through some of these topics is that it seems like we have groups of people, workers within our organisations that are at different stages, that are coming at it from different perspectives. I think let's talk for a second about how you're going to help all those people come at the adaptation at the same time. How do you guys get involved in coordinating that and making sure actually you're maintaining, everyone? How do you continue that collaboration and cohesiveness between people in the organisation, despite being perhaps geography separated, or even generationally separated. How does that work for you guys? Can we start with you, Darren?
So as I said, we've gone through these 3 waves of transformation, and a lot of it was driven from a sort of central function. And what we've found is that, you know, asking people to change, and they say, oh, it doesn't quite work, and then they look back into the centre and say, well, fix it for us. And we feel we're at a stage where that's not the solution. The solution is at the business end. So we've now created a network of people. So the digital transformation has moved from like some central driven thing to a more of a pull initiative. So we've got all of those people out there that are networked. They know the best solutions for either internal or external challenges, and they're driving it. So I think that's one thing, make it a business imperative rather than some central function. But the other, which we've touched on a few times, leadership is just so key. Right. So right from the very top level of the organisation, right down to you know, the people managing the projects, they've got to believe and drive the solution. And that was, as the CDO, that was one of my big things, you know, get the leadership on board, which wasn't hard at MacDonald because they understand the drive. But it was an interesting journey.
And Enrico, can we come to you? I mean, obviously you have a very diverse workforce separated by their function. How do you continue to maintain that everyone is sort of still staying, you know, involved and consuming the technology that you're bringing to the market? Any specific challenges there?
Incredibly difficult, and similar to yourself, it has to be done locally. It has to be done by the managers, by the supervisors, the ones who want it. It cannot be done from the centre. It certainly cannot be done from IT.
So a consumption thing, and that's exactly what Darren was saying. It's enabling consumption rather than forcing out change, perhaps.
I think also you need to be very aware of the, if you like, the culture of where you're putting in a solution. So we've all probably struggled with China as a, you know, what do you do in China because it's so different to the rest of the world.
Yes.
But equally, you know, Southeast Asia generally, there's a whole host of different needs, if you like, from people in those regions. And so I think, again, you can't do it centrally and force out the same solution. You have to build a solution that can accommodate that type of flexibility.
We're taking possibly a sort of different sort of approach because we're in 32 countries as Johnson Matthey. I've got sort of 5 IT centres, 1 in the US, 2 in the UK, 1 in Kuala Lumpur, 1 in Shanghai, and we're expanding big time in China and proud to be doing it. And I think you're absolutely right. You know, if the needs of somebody in Macedonia, Philadelphia, and Shanghai are going to be, you know, a bit different, and you know, sort of will have different views on things because of where they come from. Similarly, somebody on a production line in Royston is going to be very different to a scientist in Shanghai or the UK with 2 PhDs who's working on, you know, pushing the frontiers of knowledge. So you've got to recognise that. But what we've tried to do is set up and this is enabled by technology, a consistency of how everybody thinks about the company in terms of the purpose. So we talk a lot about the purpose with some fabulous sort of graphics in terms of you know, how we make the world cleaner and healthier. But in terms of trying to standardise, and you anybody who's global here will know how hard this is. The HR, you know, conditions of employment are. So we've tried to standardise that, and we're about to roll out, or we just started rolling out a global HR system in order to, you know, facilitate that, so people feel that sort of equality of treatment, and things like the opportunity to take 2 of your working days and deploy them on a charitable purpose. So I'm very proud of my team in Kuala Lumpur, who we've got one of the global help desks plus second line support based in KL. They took sort of food waste, which is a bigger problem in Malaysia as in the UK, and distributed it to the sort of poorer neighbourhoods in KL. So I was very proud of them for doing that. So we try and have that consistency of treatment. Now that's only enabled by IT. That's about the whole company.
Of course. Great. So perhaps we could just finish off then. I mean, I'm fascinated that we talked about mega trends, climate change, rather than mobile working per se, which is great. Can we just talk for 1 second? Let's finish off and go around the table. What's the biggest problem/opportunity that you guys think you're going to have to deal with in the next 12 months? And you've literally got like a second to tell me what you think. Let's start with you, Mark, and then we'll work our way around. Biggest thing.
As in individuals.
Individuals. We're going to start here. Individuals.
You start there. You
No,
start
go
there.
for it.
Go ahead.
For me, a really, really important one is making decisions as to whether something is going to be a fad or a real thing.
Right.
Something is going to be. If you know about Gartner's hype cycle,
Yes.
is in which direction something is going to go, and making decisions as to whether to invest in it or not invest in it. If you don't, you may miss an opportunity. If you do, you may waste your investment.
Right.
For
So
me, that's
really,
a really, really important one.
just identifying what is an opportunity and what is
versus
not.
what isn't.
Okay.
So what is hype? Yeah.
Great. Darren.
So I suppose similar. So our strapline for MacDonald Digital Ventures is connecting innovation to outcomes. So my big challenge is overcoming those barriers that block innovation. I think if we can do that, we're going to make a real
Right.
real
So
difference.
two not technologies at all, which is really fascinating. Dave.
I think it's about adoption, so reskilling the
Again,
workforce,
okay.
and getting them comfortable with the changes that are coming. I think that's the biggest challenge still.
Fascinating. Cool.
I talked about our sort of in-house innovation capability. It's how that we've got some fabulous proofs of concept, and it's how we get those into mainstream. So I've got one in a plant in Macedonia. I need that analytics tool to go global, and how do I get the great enthusiasm for people who developed it? How do I help the rest of the organisation adopt it and get the benefits?
Production. So great.
And I think it actually ties on to the question you asked before, but in terms of how do you make it successful? And again, going through the path of, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? And what's the benefit? I think if you can take employees on a journey that goes through that, because moving things to mobile, everyone has a mobile phone, 98% of the world or whatever the statistics are. But why are you doing it and what's the outcome for the business? And I think, technology by itself, IoT, great, but why are you delivering it to deliver what outcome?
Yeah.
And how are you going to then make sure that that delivers a business improvement, or whether that's top line revenue, margin, employee workforce? And I think sometimes we do see there's so much noise. I've just got to deliver this. Why?
Okay.
And then and then if you don't know, then actually the
Who
people that
knows?
are in your organisation aren't really sure why they're having to use it either.
Great. That's been really fascinating. I'm so thrilled that we've been talking not about individual technologies, but about delivering and consuming change. So thank you very much, everyone. That's been
Thank you.
really fascinating.
Been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.